welcome into another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Monday, September 30th around here, and we have a great show for you today. We're going to break down all of the Week 5 games, and we'll start with that game in Tuscaloosa. That was the game of the year. It was absolutely incredible, one of the best games I have ever seen, and it was highlighted by a kid at the end of the day. It was highlighted by a kid. So we'll get to all of that in the first segment. Then we'll get into a couple other ranked matchups. Penn State and Notre Dame get big-time top 25 wins. Definitely games that everyone had their eyes on throughout the weekend. Then we'll get into a little bit of an upset alert. There was a huge one down in Oxford, Mississippi this past weekend. And then Arizona got a Utah's number, a couple others that were definitely really, really close to happening, and one that maybe could have happened if the right call was made. I'll leave it at that for the time being. Then we'll get into the other top 25 teams, break down Arch Manning's most recent start with Texas. Kind of a rocky start for the team overall, but Arch Manning was absolutely incredible in this one. Then you have a couple others. Kansas State with a big-time win over Oklahoma State. Oklahoma rallies somehow to beat Auburn in that end of that one. And then we'll finish it off with a little bit of a Week 5 whip around, get to Tulane's big win over USF, and UNLV rolling right along, even without their starting quarterback, Matthew Sluka. So a ton to get to today, but before we jump in, I do want to remind you all we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and the best way for you all to get your question on the screen, we can have a fun back and forth here, is to use that super chat at the bottom of the chat on the Sports Network page. Really easy, just click on that, add your name, add any question, comment you'd like, and it'll pop up on the screen, and I can respond to it. We can have a fun back and forth. Definitely a huge help, not only to me, but also to you all. Just have this be a little bit more interactive. Before we jump in as well, I want to apologize for not having a show on Friday. Hurricane Helene decided to come on through my town and take out my power. So was out without power the entirety of Friday, but I definitely got the nice end of it. There are a number of people up in North Georgia into North Carolina that really got hit. So if you have, money to spare, if you're able and willing, then absolutely share with the Red Cross, share with any of the people that are down there trying to make that a better situation, because it looks pretty gnarly over there in North Carolina. So thoughts with all of those people up there, and definitely hoping for a speedy recovery for that area. But let's get into this game, because man, that's the best I can put it. This win was just incredible. It's the best football game I've seen since Georgia-Ohio State in 2022, and then right before that was Alabama-Tennessee. So there are a lot of great games in 2022, but this one was special. There's no other way to put it. Bama was in full control from the get-go. Let's be totally honest. They came out of the gates flying. The first 7 drives went Bama touchdown, UGA punt on 4 plays. Bama touchdown, UGA interception on 3 plays. Bama touchdown, UGA punt on 3 plays. Bama touchdown. Just ridiculous. Absolutely insane. Remarkable game plan from Kalen DeBoer and this offensive staff to start the game. Nick Sheridan did a great job calling plays, and they ran outside the tackles a lot, and it benefited them a ton. So we'll get into all of that throughout the game, but remarkable start from this team. I could not say enough how incredible it was that they came out of the gate and just took Georgia to the woodshed. Georgia was out-coached, they were out-manned, they were out-athleted early on in this game, and it looked like it was over. Let's be totally honest. 28-0 early in the second quarter, 30-7 at halftime, 33-15 early in the fourth quarter, and then Georgia found a way back. And a lot of it was because of Carson Beck. Obviously, a lot of the reason they were in that deficit to begin with was because of Carson Beck and this offensive play calling. But overall, really, really remarkable to find your way back into the game. I've said it a number of times, and I'll say it a little bit later as well, frankly. It's really hard to make that happen. There are a number of different ways that in that halftime, you're down 23 points. It'd be really easy to roll over. I know that Georgia is Georgia, and they're likely not to do that, but at the end of the day, in the 12-team playoff era where you have so much riding on the end of the season, you're not necessarily out of it if you lose this game. It's not necessarily all that difficult to possibly say, okay, let's get healthy, let's make sure, let's run the clock, let's just get out of here, and then we'll deal with it on Monday. That's not what they did. They found a way to battle back. It was really incredible, got a lead with 2:30 left, and then this guy happened. Ryan Williams is so impressive. Going into this game, I think there was a worry among a lot of people. I assume Bama fans as well, but me, this was a kid. This kid is 17 years old, and he was going up against grown men that are going to play in the NFL on the other side, and he made him look stupid a lot. Now, a couple of these plays, Malachi Starks had great coverage on the tip around that he somehow caught, and then I thought Julian Humphrey had pretty good coverage on that last play. He just made a great adjustment to the ball, and let's talk about that play for a second, because I've watched a lot of college football, possibly too much. Some people say too much. I ignore those people, but This is the best play I've ever seen made by a wide receiver. I know that sounds insane, but the adjustment to the ball was absolutely crazy. The catch itself is insane. The body control when he lands and does a full 360 with his feet together, I've never seen anything like that. Then he decides to bait, I believe it was bait Julian Humphrey back into the field, then hits a Jerry Jeudy type juke and then spins and accelerates to the end zone and takes his mouthpiece out before he gets to the end zone. It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in the football field. And the kid is 17. And he's not 17 as in he's going to turn 18 this week or he's going to turn 18 later this year. He turns 18 in February. He's not even close to 18. And frankly, he made me feel old. And I'm not all that old right now. So incredible. I can't say enough how incredible that play was. It is the best play that I've ever seen a wide receiver make on a college football field. I feel pretty confident in that. And frankly, you'd be hard-pressed to find one that was more impressive. It was absolutely insane. And then finally, Xavier Brown makes the play of the game. He gets the pick to end this one, and it was remarkable. The two biggest plays of this game were made by Ryan Williams and Xavier Brown. Those are both freshmen, and that's absolutely crazy, including Xavier Brown, who got beat on this very play against Arian Smith earlier in the game that set up a touchdown for Georgia. Returned the favor right back when he picked the ball off on Colby Young. Just remarkable coverage, really good play on the ball. Insane that it came down to the wire, that it came down to a couple of plays at the very end, and it was freshmen for Alabama that made those plays. It shows you just how incredible that team is and shows you they're not necessarily going anywhere, guys. So definitely going to be really fun to watch them the rest of the season. But how did they get this win? The offensive game plan is the number one thing. You score 4 touchdowns on your first 4 drives of the game in a quarter and some change in the game. Georgia hadn't given up a touchdown before that. It was absolutely insane what they were able to do. Ran a lot of outside the tackles. I believe they had over 100 yards outside the tackles rushing. Had, I believe, like 32 inside the tackles. I could be wrong about that exact number, but something like that. It was remarkable what they were able to do on the edge. And frankly, I don't know if Georgia's defense, I think they played a little bit slow to start the game. I want to be very clear about that. But I don't know what else they're supposed to do. And Kirby Smart said it later in the post game. I don't know what you're supposed to do. Jalen Milroe, if you want to rush Jalen Milroe, you're more than welcome. He handled that very, very well yesterday and took exactly what they were giving him and then made those big plays. You're welcome to leave a spy in the middle of the field, but then you're going to have numbers on the back end that you're going to have a tough time getting a handle on. You could double Ryan Williams on the outside, but then you have less bodies in the box to handle a Jalen Milroe run. This team is so hard to handle. It is a quarterback that is so dynamic with his legs that can throw a deep ball like no one else in the country with an offensive coordinator that does incredible job just putting him in the right situations, just giving him the rein to do what he does. And frankly, he's grown so much from last year. He's a remarkable player now and definitely a guy that could just straight up run away with the Heisman. And that was the second reason. Milroe was absolutely magic on Saturday. And frankly, it was a lot in the first half, no doubt about that. But 27 for 33, 374, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT through the air, 16 carries, 117, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He was everything for this team. If they did not have even a little bit of Jalen Milroe on Saturday, they probably fall in this game because he made every single play when they absolutely needed it. And it was him and Ryan Williams really towards the end of that game that were making pretty much every single play. So if he's going to win the Heisman, if he goes on and finds a way into New York and gets that big-time win, this will be the reason. This will be the moment that everyone turns to and says, he beat Georgia in their home stadium with so much on the line, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But finally, the composure of this team was really remarkable. There are very few teams in the country that can come back down from 28 down or 23 down at halftime and take a lead with 2:30 left. UGA was able to do it. Even less teams can respond to that, and Bama will be able to find a way. And this is not a team that is all that, I don't know how to put this. This is not a team that is all that veteran in sense of this coach and this team being together. They're very, very new. They are not a team that's even at their full strength as of right now, at least from where I'm standing. This is terrifying. It's as terrifying as it possibly could be for Georgia fans, for pretty much everyone in the SEC, and pretty much everyone in the country. This team is absolutely remarkable. And then you have a couple of big-time plays. You know, Dylan Bell gets loose and scores the touchdown to give Georgia the lead. And then you roll down the field. You find a way, or you roll down the field in one play, and then you find a way to get that pick at the very end of the game. It was really remarkable. Everything that Georgia tried to do to get back in this game or to finish off this game late, Alabama had an answer. It was absolutely incredible to watch. And finally, where do you go from here? I mean, If you're Georgia, it's a fascinating question because, frankly, I don't know which half to take more to put more stock in. I don't know which half has a better idea of what Georgia is going forward because the second half was incredible. Alabama was playing a little bit of off coverage. That was just the reality of the position that they were in, and Carson Beck took full advantage. It's not to take anything away from him, but that's the reality of when you're up 23 at halftime, you're going to play defense a little bit differently. On the other side, you had an offensive play calling to start this game that was downright terrible. There's really no other way to put it. Now, Carson Beck missed a number of different reads that if he made them, he absolutely would have gotten touchdowns or big-time plays. At the end of the day, you got big-time issues in play calling. You have to be able to come out of the gate faster than this and be able to start games faster because guess what? You have Tennessee coming up. You have Texas coming up. You have Ole Miss coming up. All those teams can score quickly. All those teams will do the same thing that Alabama did to you if you are not careful. And we can talk about Kirby for days on end and his issue with Alabama. I don't know what it is, but he got outcoached in the first half. There's no other way to put it. He got absolutely dominated in the first half and did a great job responding. Not to say he did a terrible job coaching overall on Saturday, but you can't come out of the gate flat. You can't come out of the gate flat on someone else's stadium against a team that you've come out flat against a lot of different times. So a number of things to figure out for Georgia. We'll get into that throughout the week, and we'll preview their game, I believe, against Auburn this upcoming weekend. So definitely more to break down there. But for Alabama, what more is there to say? This is a certified title contender. They have Jalen Milroe rolling right now. And frankly, if he's rolling, he's one of the best, maybe the best player in the entire country. He's absolutely remarkable and one of those guys that just needed a little bit of groove. Just needed a little bit of time to settle in, get his pace, and he did it last year. Now it's time to let him rip, and he's doing an incredible job. Ryan Williams is absolute magic. He's a star in this game at 17 years old. He is absolutely incredible. 6 catches, 177 yards, 1 touchdown. He was a little bit of kind of out there on an island by himself. 11 players caught catches, so it wasn't that they didn't spread the ball around, but probably need to find another guy to get 50, 70 yards a game to go along with Ryan Williams just to make it a little bit easier on you down the stretch, but man, there's nothing else to be said, right? It's really, really incredible what Alabama was able to do on Saturday, and even when Georgia found their way back into the game, they responded right away and then got a big-time stop. So I don't know what else I can say here. I think when you talk about Kalen DeBoer and what he's been able to do in such a short time over there at Alabama, you can't say enough good stuff. You really can't. They lost so many players to the portal. They lost Caleb Downs. They lost Isaiah Bond. They lost so many players and found their way back to this. They found their way back to being the best team in the country as of right now. It's really, really incredible to watch and cannot wait to see them go the rest of the season. Obviously, plenty of hurdles to come, and we'll see if they can get over those, but they just got over maybe the biggest one on their entire schedule on Saturday and did it in kind of emphatic fashion, at least in the first half. So it's going to be awesome to watch those two teams. We'll see how Georgia rebounds against Auburn, and a lot of questions around there, and we'll get into that throughout the week. So incredible. That's my final word on this. Absolutely incredible. One of the best games I've ever seen, and definitely the game of the year thus far. So going to be awesome to watch those two teams finish out the year. But let's take our first break here. And when we come back, we'll get to the other two big-time games from this past weekend. Penn State got a big-time win over Illinois, although a little bit ugly at times. And then Notre Dame got a pretty close win at the end of the day against Louisville, although score makes it look a little bit closer than it was. So we'll break it down right after this, so stick with us.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about that crazy game down there in Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Definitely the game of the year, one of the best plays that I've ever seen from Ryan Williams to finish that one off. So incredible. Cannot wait to see possibly those teams again, but cannot wait to see a number of other matchups coming up. Georgia against Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, which is on the same weekend. So a lot coming forward for those two teams, but remarkable game down there in Tuscaloosa. Now let's get into a couple other wins because Penn State, Notre Dame got big-time top 25 wins this past weekend, and they did it in kind of interesting fashion, especially Penn State, because this was not the normal Penn State, at least the one that we've become accustomed to early on in this season. It was a little bit back to kind of factory settings, if you will. It was a lot of running the ball, not a ton of explosive, just kind of working your way down the field and getting a pretty ugly win at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, it is a win. So huge for them, absolutely something that you got to be able to win multiple ways. And knowing that they can win running the ball and playing defense is a huge feather in your cap. There's no doubt about that. So Illinois did not play their game. They kind of got their game taken from them. It was nothing on the ground, multiple turnovers, lost time of possession, everything that you need to do if you're Illinois to win this game, they just weren't able to do. And it's definitely something that you kind of felt was coming at some point for Illinois. I think they're a really, really good team, and I think they're going to be dangerous going forward. They got Michigan in a couple of weeks, so that'll be something to watch. But when you watch this team, I think everyone understood that once they faced Penn State, once they faced Michigan, once they faced Ohio State, it was going to be an uphill battle, and that's exactly what it was. The physicality was a little bit different than it had been the first couple of weeks for Illinois. So this was the first hurdle for Penn State, definitely a huge one to get over. At Ohio State and at USC and Ohio State, are definitely the remaining ones, and they're plenty big. So you're going to have to play better football than you did on Saturday, no doubt about that, but got a big-time win, move forward, and then handle all the rest of it later. How did they win this one, though? The two-headed monster came back out, and frankly, I'd been waiting for this a little bit this season. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton are just downright special. They combined for 34 carries, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns. These guys were absolutely incredible, and frankly, they were the reason that they won this game. If they were not out on that field, it probably would be 7-7, and no one would be able to get in the end zone, and we might still be playing right now, because these offenses did not get going by any means. But the running backs for Notre Dame did save them and got them just a huge, huge win at home. And then you had no running room for Illinois, which obviously was a huge part of their game, has been the entire year, and it was D-line domination. They pushed around a really solid unit for Illinois for the entirety of the game, 32 carries, 34 yards. The only positive rusher was Caden Fagan, and he only had 13 carries because of the flow of the game, because of how hard it was to get some of these guys carries throughout this game. And then you had the pass rush for Penn State. It was absolutely incredible. Abdul Carter made a couple of mental errors early on in this game, a couple of offsides, things like that, but 7 tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, plenty makes up for that. He was absolutely remarkable. Definitely one of those guys that if you can continue to come on, they have every chance to beat Ohio State. They have every chance to go to the playoff and possibly make a run there. He's so special and definitely one of those guys to watch. And then as a total, you got 7 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. Just absolute domination from this pass rush, and something that Penn State's likely going to need a lot going forward. So where do they go from here? I think for Illinois, you just took their first punch in this 4-game stretch, and frankly, it's not going to get a ton easier. You do have a bye week, and then you get Purdue, so should be able to get right a little bit there. Then it's Michigan and Oregon, so it's a huge stretch. If they can possibly go 2 for 1 in the next little bit, if they can beat Michigan somehow or somehow beat Oregon, I don't know. They're still a team that's very much in this race, and it's going to be really fun to watch them go over the next couple of weeks. A little bit worried about this team in terms of the line of scrimmage. If they're going to get rolled over on the defensive line the way that they did in this game, Michigan's going to tear them apart, Oregon's going to tear them apart, but plenty still ahead for this team, and definitely plenty to figure out. Penn State, this is huge. I understand this is not the score that you wanted. I understand this is not the way that you wanted to win this game. This is a game that they lose in the past. This is a game that sneaks up on them and absolutely kind of torpedoes their season in a number of different ways because of how lackadaisical they have been in some of these games in the past. They were able to handle this. That is what you take and you run with it. Don't worry about all of the other stuff. Don't worry about the nuances of this game that weren't great. I'm not going to lie to you by any means, but at the end of the day, you got a big-time win. You got to go UCLA next, coming to you, thank goodness, and then you got to go out to LA to play USC. That's the one where you get in the fast track for a CFP berth, but plenty to figure out before you get there, that is for sure. And then you got Louisville, Notre Dame, and this one was really interesting. Really impressive win for Notre Dame in my mind. I think they found some openings in the pass game, which was absolutely huge. The defense is flying around as they do. They're really remarkable, and it sets up a great matchup possibly at the end of the year that could just be a CFP on the line for them against USC. And then you had a really, really awesome job for Notre Dame to try to take the air out of Louisville's tires. You had a huge run from Tyler Shuck that was negated by a fumble forced by Jaden Osbury. You had turnover on downs, 5 plays, 21 yards the very next drive, and then for first play touchdown. They did an incredible job of just not letting Louisville really get rolling. They got a couple of big plays, and then Notre Dame would take the ball back. Louisville gets within one score, and then Xavier Watts gets a pick. It was remarkable to watch this team just respond and be able to kind of just, whenever Louisville had a punch, they had a counter punch. It was really remarkable to watch, and more than anything for Louisville, just too many self-inflicted wounds. It felt like a team that had not been tested yet, and that's exactly what we got. So definitely a lot to figure out. Still plenty in front of them. Definitely can be a player in the ACC, but a tough loss here and plenty to figure out over there at Louisville. How Notre Dame was able to win a balanced offense for the first time this year. And I understand they were able to do it against some lesser opponents, but the reality is they need this throughout the rest of the year. They had 163 through the air, 120 on the ground, only 6 incompletions, 4 yards per carry. It was exactly what you wanted it to be. It's the formula that they're going to have to do going forward, get enough on offense and then play really, really good defense the entire day. They got plenty on offense in this one. And then build a buffer early. I think there's another thing for Notre Dame that they're going to have to do the rest of the way. Fell down 0-7 early, but then 21 straight points and never looked back. And it's really because this run game is going to be good. It's going to be dangerous with Riley Leonard, with Jeremiah Love, with Jadarian Price. All of these guys are going to be really hard to stop. If Notre Dame gets up by 2 scores in pretty much any game this year, you can almost book them as a winner because it's absolutely huge for this team and they can just run the ball all over you to finish out that game. And then finally, bend but don't break. This was probably the biggest thing in this game. There were a number of different chances that Louisville had to possibly put points on the board and make this more interesting. I mean, they had drives of 48 yards, 60 yards, 45 yards, and a couple more over 30. They ended in an INT, a turnover on downs, and a punt. They absolutely have to do better than that, and a huge thing for Notre Dame because there were a number of different chances Louisville had to really kick this door down and possibly make this a real game, and Notre Dame just had an answer. Really remarkable stuff from this team, and where they go from here, I think, for Louisville, you're still in okay shape. I understand this one's a tough loss, but the reality is you start conference play next week. You have no in-conference losses with the win over Georgia Tech last week. You play a good SMU team that's surging right now. Then you go to Virginia before the big one against Miami. If you can split between Miami and Clemson the rest of the year, you're very much in the conversation for an ACC title berth. You'll knock out one of those teams and you'll be able to join the other possibly in the ACC title. So still plenty on the table for this team. I think they're still finding themselves. I still think they're trying to figure out who they are offensively and defensively. But at the end of the day, still plenty on the table for this team. Still very, very dangerous downfield. And one of those teams that if Miami or Clemson don't come ready at the very beginning of those games, maybe Louisville's up 14-0 before you know it, and they have a couple of big plays, Ja'Cory Brooks, and things change in a hurry. And then for Notre Dame, this was huge. There were a number of different places that this season can go wrong the rest of the way. This was probably the biggest one before you get to USC, and they were able to get through it. Now, you do have Stanford, you got Georgia Tech and Atlanta, you got Navy and Army who are playing really good football right now, and then you got USC to end the season. I'm not even going to include Florida State because I'm just going to mark that down as a win, and we'll get to them probably tomorrow, honestly, more than anything else. But really huge win for Notre Dame. I think it's one of those things that you just saw what your team can be. You just saw what they can be in offense. You just saw what they absolutely are on defense. You saw what this team has a capability of being, and frankly, if you can bottle that up and you can continue that throughout the rest of the season, there's a number of things that Notre Dame can do. I know that NIU game was really ugly, and I've said with my chest, and I will continue to say it, I think that should eliminate them from the playoffs, but it doesn't. You're very much still in the fight, and you very much can put together a great season the rest of the way and be the 5 seed, be the 6 seed, and be very much in the conversation for a national title. So huge win for this team. I think when you look at the wins from this past weekend, this one might get a little bit lost in the shuffle, but absolutely one that Notre Dame needed, and they got a huge one, no doubt about that. So really impressive wins from these two teams. I think when you look at these games, didn't necessarily beat you over the head, didn't necessarily send a huge statement for either of these teams, but when you can get a top 20 win, you absolutely take it and you run with it. You got plenty to figure out at those two places, but a big win is a big win at the end of the day. So huge for both those teams. I think it's going to be really fun to watch them the rest of the year and see if they can possibly make playoff runs and maybe they'll just meet in the playoff. Who knows? But let's take our second break here. And when we come back, we got to talk about upsets because we had a huge one down in Oxford. We had another one up, I believe, up in Salt Lake City. I could be wrong about that, actually. And then we had one in Blacksburg that maybe should have been. But we'll get to that right after this, so stick with us.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just got to those two big-time games with Penn State and Notre Dame. Got big-time wins, definitely wins that they very much needed. Somewhat in ugly fashion, especially for Penn State, but got that win, keep moving forward, and definitely have CFP chances going forward. But let's get into some upsets, because there was a huge one down in Oxford, and frankly, I didn't see it coming at all. I definitely was looking at this game a little bit skeptically throughout the week, but I don't think I ever picked them to lose by any means. So it's going to be awesome to break this one down, and frankly, I don't even know where to start. I think there's a number of different places to start, but I think I got to start with that 4th and 7. I mean, when you talk about what Kentucky did against Georgia, they gave the ball away, down 1. Georgia never gave it back with 3 minutes left, and I think Mark Stoops knew it. I think Mark Stoops knew that he probably left a little bit on the table on that one, and he wasn't doing it in this one. He went for it 4th and 7 on their own 20, deep ball to Berrien Brown for 63 yards. Remarkably gutsy, and not something that I thought Mark Stoops would ever do. So really, really impressive. Brock Vandegrift played really solid football in this one. Wasn't perfect by any means. Definitely has a number of things to figure out, but he kind of slung the ball around. He kind of did exactly what he was brought there to do, which is throw the ball confidently in rhythm, and he did a really solid job of that. Obviously, 20 points is probably what you're going to get from Kentucky going forward. This is probably the formula if they're going to beat some of these teams, is possess the ball, get a couple of big-time plays, and then absolutely, play incredible defense, which is exactly what they did. This D-line is really, really dominating. Incredible job from them on Saturday. The physical linebacker play is incredible from De'Aaron Jackson and Pop Dumas Johnson. Really incredible players there. And then on the back end, you just got so much experience, so much length, so many guys that can make plays for this team. It's really remarkable to watch this team go to work. And then Ole Miss just couldn't get anything going in the run game, and that's obviously a huge prerequisite for them doing anything offensively. 92 yards, 3.2 yards per carry, just not nearly there. And on the other side of things, when you're out throwing the ball, you're going straight to Trey Harris. He's the only wide receiver that made noise, 11 catches, 176 yards, and a score. The next closest receiver had 3 catches. You have to be able to spread the ball out more if you're Ole Miss, because you got plenty of guys to spread the ball out to. Jordan Watkins is absolutely incredible. Juice Wells is absolutely awesome. There are so many guys you can get the ball to, and you weren't able to get to really anyone other than Trey Harris. And if Caden Prescorn doesn't make that catch at the very end of the game, his stat sheet looks a lot different. So you very much have to get these guys the ball. You have to spread the ball out more. I know Trey Harris is maybe the best receiver in the country. You got to be able to give him some help on the outside. So Ole Miss has a lot to figure out. They are not physical enough on the O-line right now. They're not even close to physical enough. If they're going to play Georgia, if they're going to play LSU, might be a little bit easier. I'll be totally honest with you. But there are a couple of different teams that if they're going to play this way on the O-line, they're going to have a lot of games like this, where they leave a lot on the table, where the offense never really gets going, and they lose to a team like Kentucky that, by all accounts, they should absolutely beat. So definitely a huge loss for them. I think this is not a title team right now. We came into the year feeling pretty confident in them, but definitely a little bit skeptical, felt a little bit better throughout the last couple of weeks. This was their first big test, and they came up flat. They did not play physical football. They did not play good football by any means. The offense was very stagnant and really only attacked by one guy, really, in Trey Harris. It was just all over the place. I think they have a really tough road ahead with LSU, with Georgia, so you got a lot to figure out. There's no two ways about that. For the Kentucky team, I mean, you could be 4-0, 4-1 right now with wins over Georgia and Ole Miss. I know that Georgia game went a little bit sideways and got away from you, but at the end of the day, this is a good team. This is a team that's going to be really tough to deal with just about every team that's going to face them, and I cannot wait to see what they can do the rest of the year. And then we had another one over there in Utah because Arizona went up there and just got a win, just dominated them on defense, and frankly, it sounds like that's the story of this game. Cam Rising, you had one game without Cam Rising where you could play elite defense, handle everything in front of you, and be able to get the win. You need Cam Rising back. Isaac Wilson was 50% completion on the day, 2 interceptions. Only consistent target was really Dorian Singer in this game. They have a number of things to figure out, and the number one is definitely getting Cam Rising on the field. As for Arizona, they found another pass catcher, which is absolutely huge. Keon Burnett is absolutely an incredible tight end. 5 catches, 76 yards, and a score. Incredible score. Noah Fafita threw an absolute dart on that touchdown. But if you can get someone to go along with T-Mac in this offense, you're going to be much more dangerous. And it sounds like they might have gotten their guy. Going to be really fun to watch this offense go forward the rest of the way. And on the defensive side of the ball, the D-line was incredible against a really, really physical attack for Utah. 2.9 yards per carry, 84 yards for Utah. I mean, when you're putting that much on Isaac Wilson's shoulders, you're not really going to be all that successful on offense. So definitely a huge win for this team. This conference just got another twist, and they've gotten a number of others throughout this weekend that we'll get to a little bit later. But man, absolutely massive win for Arizona. Gets them back into the fight. For Utah, you got a lot to figure out. You were the consensus number one team in that conference. Now you're somewhere in the pack, and it's going to be incredible to watch that conference come down to the wire. But man, what a game, and definitely a huge win for Arizona. Gets them back at least in the fight. And then you had this one, and man, I'll get to this one pretty quickly here, but more than anything, I want to get to the catch before we get to anything else. To me, that was not a catch. I'll say that from the jump. I do not think that was a catch. At the same time, you cannot overturn that, because I cannot say confidently that that was not a catch. I cannot say confidently that I saw enough on those video replays to say that absolutely was not a catch. If you call it a touchdown on the field, it should have been a touchdown on the field. That's the end-all, be-all on that. I don't really see another argument, if I'm being totally honest. But at the end of the day, this is the Virginia Tech team that I expected to see this entire year. And it took them a while to get here, for sure. But Kyron Jones made tons of off-schedule plays. Byshal Tootin had 141, 2 scores, really, really special. And then you got multiple players involved. 6 players with at least 3 catches in this game. Did an incredible job, and a really dangerous team going forward. I think they're probably out of the ACC race. I think everyone can probably say that. But at the end of the day, still a team that's going to be really fun to watch the rest of the way. And if they got this one, it would have been really interesting over there in the ACC. But Miami keeps rolling along, I suppose. Despite that call, they keep rolling along. They get to move forward undefeated, and down 10 points 2 times in this game, found a way back. So although the last play I have some issues with, they did find a way back into this game, gave themselves a shot to win. Cam Ward was a little bit up and down. It was a little bit more like what we saw at Washington State, and that not so much an incarnate word, but at Washington State, a little bit more of an up and down performance from him, but made the one big play when it mattered. Just a ridiculous play that was a little bit psychopathic, but you got to be a little bit psychopathic to play quarterback in college football. So Miami heads out to Cal for, actually game day is going to be out there this weekend, and we'll see what they can do there. A huge one for them, and then you get a bye, so you get a little bit of time to kind of regroup yourself. For Virginia Tech, I don't know how you bounce back. I got to be totally honest with you. I don't know how you look at what happened on Saturday and not say I don't want to say it was rigged, because I'm not going to get into that conversation. I know a lot of people are having that conversation. I will not. But at the end of the day, it's got to hurt. You got to be able to regroup a little bit, but this was a moment that your entire season could have changed, and it didn't go your way for reasons that are totally outside of your control. But a huge win for Miami at the very least, and they keep moving forward undefeated and still a top team in this country. And then you got BYU. I turned off this game. I got to be totally honest with you guys. BYU went up 21-0 very, very quickly, and I said, okay, that's fine. Baylor is Baylor. Let's move it on. And then Baylor find their way back into the game. It was really incredible. They were on 31-14 at half, and then were able to cut it really, really quickly. Touchdown to start the second half, and then added the touchdown to cut it to 6. But just couldn't finish the game. BYU was able to finish this one. BYU's just a good team. I think it's one of those things that I don't think anyone really saw it coming going into the season, but they're 2-0. They're at the very top of the conference with Colorado and Texas Tech. That is where the Big 12 is right now. Absolutely insane conference, and definitely one that is going to be really fun to watch going forward. BYU had 4 touchdowns on the first 4 drives. They had as many field goal drives as interceptions the rest of the game. You got to figure that out. You can't just start fast and then decide you're going to sit on your laurels. You have to be able to finish games throughout, especially in the Big 12 when there's no one that really stands out among the rest. You're going to have to make sure that you keep your wits about you throughout an entire game. But at the end of the day, got to win, move forward, and definitely still very much in the conversation for the Big 12 title. And then you had an interesting one for Western Kentucky and Boston College because Western Kentucky was in full control for this and pretty much this entire game. Boston College escaped with this one, got their first lead of the game with 3:30 left in it. It was absolutely incredible, and the main reason was Thomas Castellanos was not in this game. It was Grayson James starting, and huge shout out to him. Was not a perfect performance by any means, but got enough. Did just enough to win this game, and hopefully you'll have Thomas Castellanos back next week. Sounds like it was just an illness, so should be back next week, but 2 huge turnovers from WKU in the second half turned into 57-yard and 20-yard touchdown drives. Just a couple of mistakes. That's all it takes for these upset bids to kind of fall apart, and Western Kentucky had a huge chance on Saturday that they saw slip right through their fingers. And then you had NIU that was weirdly on track for one of the funniest and one of the weirdest paths to the CFP you have ever seen. When they lost to Buffalo, but you have wins over Notre Dame and at NC State. You have every ability to possibly make a run at the playoff. Obviously, coming out on the wrong side probably knocks them out, but the group of 5 is all over the place right now, so we'll see what happens. NC State was not able to get the run game going against NIU, and they very badly have to. It's something that if they can't get that going the rest of the year, there is not a game that they can't lose on this schedule. I'm just being totally honest. I think NIU is a really fun team to watch. Antonio Brown and Ethan Hampton are very, very fun. Obviously did not have their best day on Saturday, but definitely a team that's worth your time, especially when we get to MACtion time of year. If you flip them on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, you will not regret it. It's a very, very fun team. NC State, I don't know. They are who they are at this point. I felt pretty good about them coming into the year, and Grayson McCall has gotten benched. They can't get Justin Jolie or Noah Rogers going. They can't get anyone going. It's absolutely atrocious over there, and definitely a ton to figure out, or they're just going to be another team in the ACC. So a bunch of huge games. I think when you look at the upsets around the country, obviously the 2 big ones, Kentucky and Arizona, getting those big-time wins, but there were a number of others that were very, very close. If one bounce of ball play goes the other direction, they're very much in it and possibly have a win on their schedule. So very, very close games. Really fun to watch that. But let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of a breakdown of the rest of the top 25 teams. What did they do this past weekend? USC was able to get over a little bit of a scare from Wisconsin. Kansas State got a big-time ranked win over Oklahoma State. A lot of things to break down, and we'll do it right after this, so stick with us.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the upset bids, including one that came through with Kentucky getting a big-time win over Ole Miss, and the Rebels got a lot to figure out, I can promise you that. But let's get to the rest of the top 25 teams. There were a number of big-time games this past weekend, a number of teams that let teams back in it a little bit too much, and we'll get to that here in a second. But let's start with the number 1 team in the land. Well, not anymore, but they were going into this game. Texas gets a big-time win over Mississippi State. It took a little bit to get this Texas team going, a number of self-inflicted wounds that likely can be fixed going forward, so I'm not overly worried about where Texas is. Obviously did not have Quinn Ewers in this game. Arch Manning was awesome. 26 for 31, 324, 2 touchdowns. He was in full control all day. Really impressive win from that kid, but I think it's one of those things that Texas did not do a good job of sustaining drives with a couple of fumbles from Jaden Blue, a couple of false starts from guys that should not be giving you false starts. Frankly, it was Arch Manning trying to pull all the veterans along, then the veterans pulling Arch Manning along, which is the way that should have worked. But they get the win, they move forward. Mississippi State did a really solid job of kind of executing what we call the upset plan, got a number of long drives, controlled the ball, just couldn't put it into end zone. And Texas defense was just all over them. 6 sacks for this defense. Colin Simmons, another freshman that's just absolutely ridiculous on the defensive side of the ball. So a lot of guys to watch in this freshman class, obviously. But a big win for Texas. They get their first win in the SEC, and they keep moving forward. Sounds like Quinn Ewers will be back after the bye week against Oklahoma. And then you got Ohio State. We talked about Ryan Williams. There's plenty of time to talk about Ryan Williams going forward. Jeremiah Smith is just as good. He makes plays that I have never seen on the football field. 5 catches, 83 yards and a score. 2 just outright insane catches, and you're seeing one right there. This dude is absolutely special. They outgained Michigan State by 200 yards, 3 turnovers for Michigan State, dominated them on the line of scrimmage. This is what we saw, what we expected to see at least from Ohio State in this season, and they're executing. Obviously, did not play a gauntlet of a schedule going into this game, and Michigan State's not an elite team or the team that they're going to have to beat going forward in Oregon and Michigan, but at the end of the day, played a team with a pulse and absolutely dominated them. So really impressive stuff. I think you got Iowa next week, so it's about to get a little bit more interesting, and then you go to Oregon. So it's about to get real for Ohio State in a hurry. We'll see how they handle it. I think they're going to be more than fine, but definitely a big-time win. Now you move forward to the real meat of that schedule. And then you got a big their rival, Michigan, that really struggled in this one. This was a very, very weird game. One of those games that you realize just how little of a change-up that this Michigan team has. They had 86 passing yards on 18 attempts from Alex Orji. They got nothing. If they're going to run the ball, cool. They can absolutely win a ton of games if they're going to be able to do that the entirety of the game. There's no lead that's safe against this for this team. There's no lead that they can sit on and feel really good about. They were up 24-3 in the start of the fourth quarter. How do you let a Minnesota team back in? How is your defense not able to stop them and stonewall them the way you had been the first 3 quarters? Just really, really rough. And I think it's one of those things that shows you exactly who Michigan is. They're a team that's walking a very tight tightrope right now, and they're a team that's plenty capable of walking that and getting to the end undefeated. I don't think they will. If this is the way that they're going to be able to play, or they're going to play games going forward, which they don't have another option really, there's going to be a game that comes along where that team has that extra oomph that Minnesota didn't have. So I'm worried about this team going forward. Now, they do have Khalil Mullings, who went to absolute work in this game. 24 carries, 111 yards, 2 scores. This dude is just Blake Corum from last year, but frankly, he might be a little bit better. Remarkable player, and definitely one of those guys that is going to be a huge piece of what Michigan's, maybe the biggest piece of what Michigan's going to do going forward. And then you had a USC team that got off to a really rough start in this one. They were down 21-10 at the end of the first half, and then outscored them 28-0 the rest of the way. Wisconsin couldn't get anything going in the second half. 67 total yards of offense after looking pretty good in the first half, hitting a couple of deep balls, getting the run game going a little bit, and definitely kind of shocking this USC team just a little bit. But a big-time win for them. This was one of those games that you were looking at it saying, you just came off a really tough loss to Michigan. This is a team that's likely going to do things a lot of the same way that Michigan did them. Are they going to be able to rebound? And for the first half, it looked like they couldn't, but they finally were able to do that. Huge win for them. They go to Minnesota next week, which we just saw can get a little bit sketchy on you. And then they got Penn State. So huge game there, obviously, but USC stays alive. That's the most important thing right now, especially in the Big Ten, when pretty much anyone can beat anyone on any given day. And then we had another ranked matchup that was aggressive, and it was one of those that really wasn't all that crazy going into halftime. I believe it was 14-13 going into halftime. Kansas State trailed 13-7, and Ollie Gordon looked like 2023 Ollie Gordon, and then it all fell apart. Oklahoma State got outscored 35-7 the rest of the way. Really good offensive game plan for Kansas State. Looked like the team that we'd seen the first couple of weeks, and frankly that I expect to see the rest of the way. 283 passing, 300 rushing. DJ Giddens had 187 yards and a score. A lot of really good things happened for Kansas State in the second half of this game. I think if you're Oklahoma State, you got Ollie Gordon going for a little bit. You got a couple of big-time carries out of him, and a lot of this was game flow. You know, you're down by that much. Ollie Gordon's not getting the ball very much. So it's not necessarily that. I think he took a big-time step forward, and I think this offensive line did as well. But when you're going to make that many mistakes towards the end of a game, you're going to get dominated, especially against a team that has someone so dangerous on the other side of the field. So big win for Kansas State. Probably knocks Oklahoma State out of the running for the Big 12. But as we know, that's a crazy conference and can get even crazier next week. So we'll see what happens there. But Kansas State gets back on track after a very weird win for a very weird loss to Boise last week. So huge win for them. And then you had Oklahoma get the weirdest win that I've seen in quite some time. This is a sicko's paradise, was this game. It was all over the place, pretty sloppy, got a couple of big-time plays from Michael Hawkins to open it, and a couple of big-time plays downfield from this Auburn offense, but he did enough. Michael Hawkins did enough, and you cannot ask more from this kid, a freshman walking into Jordan-Hare, going 10 for 15, 161 yards, 14 carries, 69 yards, 1 touchdown. No turnovers. That is the number one thing. No turnovers for this kid. An absolutely huge win for Oklahoma. And frankly, if you're Auburn, I don't know what you do. You're up 21-10 against a team that really doesn't have much of an offense to begin with. With 9 minutes left in the game, you give up a touchdown drive of 67 yards when you hadn't done that really all day unless Michael Hawkins was running crazy. And then Kip Lewis picks off Peyton Thorne and takes it back for the lead. This Auburn team is just almost infuriating to watch, and I'm not an Auburn fan. I can't imagine what it's like to watch for Auburn fans because it's ridiculous. It's a team that I think they outgained Oklahoma by over 200 yards in this game. This is not a game that they should lose. It's a game that they should never lose. You're at home. You outgain a team that is coming into the first road environment in the SEC with a backup quarterback, the best 5 receivers out of the game. In my opinion, their best running back, although Javonte Barnes is a very good player. I love Taylor Tatum. He was out of this game, and you lose. I don't know how it happened, but frankly, just strap in. If you're an Auburn fan, I would love to give you better news right now, but just strap in for the rest of the season because it might just get ugly in a hurry. And then you got an A&M team that got another really weird, kind of ugly win. I'll be totally honest. Got outgained in this game, had a worse third down conversion, only had 50% completion, although that's probably the way that they're going to go about business. But they got 3 takeaways, and that was the difference in this game. Huge game from this defense, and did really what this defense pretty much become accustomed to doing, really handling a lot of teams and giving their team at least a shot to win, and they did enough in this one. I think this A&M offense does need to do better. There's no two ways about that. I think when you play those big-time games against Alabama, against Texas down the road, you have to be able to score more. Against Missouri this upcoming weekend, you have to be able to score more than this. There's no way you're going to be able to beat Missouri with 21 points. Maybe you will, and maybe I'll be eating my words in a week, but at the end of the day, they need more wide receivers to get the ball. Noah Thomas had over 100 yards, which is huge for this team, but no one else had over 25, and no one had over 2 catches. So they got to be able to get the ball out to more guys. They got to be able to get this passing game going a little bit more, although I know it's not going to be a mainstay of this offense. Give yourself at least a shot through the air, because right now you are not, and it's going to be really rough down the stretch of the season if you're not able to figure it out. Obviously, big-time win for them, handles business, moves on, and you got a big one against Missouri this upcoming weekend, which could change a lot of what I'm saying, but at the end of the day, this is a team that I'm a little bit worried about going forward. And now we got to talk about Ashton Jeanty. My God, this kid is incredible. He is an absolute superhuman. He's 5'9". Frankly, I've been trying to figure out a comparison. I've been trying to figure out a comp, and frankly, I don't even know if this one's all that good, but he runs like Todd Gurley with more physicality, and I don't know how that's possible. He is so incredible. He can hurdle over you. He can juke you in open field. He can run through your face. He is absolutely incredible. He is one of the best running backs I've ever seen on a college football field. I don't care that he played Washington State. I don't care that he hasn't played those big-time teams. When he did against Oregon, he tore them to pieces. And I got to be honest, I can only imagine what those NIL offers were from some other schools this past offseason. Not saying that I have any information, obviously, but at the end of the day, they had to be astronomical numbers. But 26 carries, 259 yards, 4 touchdowns, has had over 250 in 2 games, over 120 in the other 2, 10.3 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns against Georgia Southern, 3 against Oregon, 4 on Saturday. He's magic. He's above the pace right now that Barry Sanders was on in his record-setting season in 1988. But at the end of the day, Barry Sanders really kicked it up a notch once he got into conference play. We'll see if Ashton Jeanty can do the same thing. But, man, this kid is absolutely incredible. And Boise State, still a team that has plenty to do with what the G5 is going to be this upcoming year. We'll talk about the team that they're going to have to go through here in a second. But really, really remarkable stuff from this team. And, frankly, if Ashton Jeanty keeps running the ball that way, I don't know if they're going to be beat. I got to be totally honest. I don't know if they're going to be beat the rest of the way. And then you get into the CFP. If you have a player like that who will be the best player on the field, pretty much bar none, unless they play a very few select teams, this kid could take over the game and win it for you single-handedly. So Boise State might be one of those teams that not only could make the CFP as a group of 5, but maybe get that one big-time win. It's because of Ashton Jeanty, because of how incredible he is. So a lot of really remarkable games. No two ways about that. I think when you talk about that Kansas State win, very much needed. Gets them back into the hunt, puts them pretty much right where everyone else is. I mean, you have BYU, Texas Tech, and Colorado up top, believe it or not. But at the end of the day, still plenty of time to play, and I think Kansas State is still the favorite in Vegas. So huge win for them. And then you got a number of other ones. I think when you talk about USC being able to shake off that early start from Wisconsin, absolutely huge for what this team is going to be going forward. So a number of big-time games, but let's take our last break here. And when we come back, we're just going to do a little bit of a whip around. All of the games that we haven't got a chance to get to throughout the first couple of segments, we'll get to in this last one. So stick with us, and we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the other big-time games from this past weekend, including Ashton Jeanty just continuing his Heisman campaign. Just remarkable to watch that kid go to work, and one of the best running backs I have ever seen. I'll be totally honest with you guys. And then we got a number of other games. We got so many games that we have to get to. Likely we'll get to a couple more tomorrow, maybe at least a couple more, but man, there is so much to get to. But let's start with a game that I really want to talk about here for a second, mainly because these are two teams that came in with 2 losses. They're likely out of this CFP race, but both these two teams have 2 losses to really, really good teams. USF lost, obviously, to Miami last week and then Alabama earlier in the year. Tulane lost to Kansas State and OU. Obviously not on the level of USF, but when you beat them 45-10, you give yourselves a shot. So I'm one of those guys that if Tulane continues to roll this way the rest of the season, I might be trying to bang my chest to get them into the playoff. This is a really, really good team, and Darian Mensah is becoming a star before our eyes. 18 for 22, 326, 3 touchdowns for the freshman. The trio of wide receivers with Fleming, Williams, Brown, ridiculous. Truly one of the most dangerous trios in the entire country. A tough start for USF has turned into much more. Obviously, it was one of those games, or one of those starts to the season that you're thinking, they're going to struggle. There's no two ways about that. They're likely going to lose those 2 games, but if you can get out of it healthy, if you can get out of it feeling good about yourself, you likely have a lot still in front of you. This was a tough loss. This was one of those losses that you felt like this was the moment that USF could kind of get the train back on the tracks. Get the train back on the tracks, and it did not work by any means. So a huge win for Tulane. I still think they're in the CFP race. I'm still going to beat my chest hoping that they get into the CFP. But at the end of the day, I think the team that's leading the race right now is the UNLV Rebels. Oh my goodness. Haj Malik Williams is absolutely incredible. He went to work in this game, and frankly, I can't imagine what it was like his last week. He probably got the news that he was starting on Wednesday or so, and found a way to get it done. He was absolutely incredible. 13 for 16, 182, 3 touchdowns through the air, 12 carries, 119 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. If there was anything more he could do, I don't know what it was. It was pretty much anything more would just be washing the jerseys. That was all he had to do that he didn't do on Saturday. And I bet Ricky White is pretty happy that he has a new quarterback. No disrespect to Matthew Sluka, but 11 catches, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns speaks for itself, especially after the start to the season that he had. So, as of right now, UNLV is that team to beat in the CFP race. No two ways about it. Got 2 big-time wins over Kansas and Houston to start the year. Just took a really good Fresno State team to the woodshed. And they get Syracuse this upcoming Friday. So we'll see what happens there. If they get that win, then they're far and away the team to beat in this race, and cannot wait to see this what this team can do with Haj Malik Williams at the controls. And then we had one on Friday that was very, very interesting. One that Rutgers kind of let Washington back in just a little bit. It was a close game at the end of the day, but Washington was able to get back in and give themselves a shot to win this game. And Grady Gross missed, and he missed 3 in this game, 2 in the fourth quarter. Really tough loss for him. Definitely one that I'm sure he's wearing really aggressively right now. So hopefully he can get back on the right track. And they got a big one against Michigan, and they are favored in that game this weekend. So we'll get to that one throughout the week, but crazy. But Kyle Monaghan is an absolute beast. 25 carries, 132 yards, and a score in this one. He is what Rutgers is going to be going forward. Him and Sam Jackson are the guys that you are very much going to have to see be absolute beasts if Rutgers is going to keep this up. But they're 4-0, and they very much have a path to 9 wins. They might just have a path to 10 wins, honestly. This is a very, very good team, and one of those that isn't going to hand you a lot. It's going to be really, really tough to just beat this team straight up, and especially if Kyle Monaghan is going, you're probably not going to beat this team straight up. And then we got this one. We have to talk about this one here for a second because this team up in Boulder is a little bit different. Now, I still think they have a lot of pitfalls in front of them. I still think they have issues that could be exposed going forward. But they are more talented. They are much tougher. They are much better coached. And frankly, they just show up to these games with a lot more confidence than they did last year. Not to say that they didn't have confidence. Obviously, they did. That is not in short supply by any means up there in Boulder. But at the end of the day, they have more guys now. They have more guys on defense that can make those plays that you very much needed a year ago. And then when you give the ball back to this offense, if you can protect Shedeur the way they did in this game, I believe only 2 sacks for UCF, you're going to win a lot of games. You are going to win a game that you are not supposed to win. Frankly, I don't want to say supposed to win, but this is a game that KJ Jefferson is a big-time running quarterback that is really hard to tackle against a Colorado team that had their issues tackling in the past. And they found a way to get it done. Got a number of turnovers from KJ Jefferson in this offense. And there's a road that is going to get really interesting for Colorado in the Big 12. It does not get easier from here. They have a bye, and then they have Kansas State, I believe, followed by Utah. So it's not going to be easy by any means. But when you talk about the Big 12 right now, there is nothing set in stone. And one thing I can tell you right now, the athletes over there in Boulder are just as good, if not better, than a number of the athletes other places. So a lot of stuff can happen, and Travis Hunter just continues his Heisman run. Really remarkable stuff from this kid, and he is the best player in football. I can say that with absolute confidence at this point. And then we got an Indiana team that is undefeated still. A really, really good game from them. One that was a little bit scary there for a second. There was true back and forth until the fourth quarter, and then Indiana was able to score 21 unanswered points. Many mistakes, but did a great job bouncing back. A really, really good team. One of those teams that I think you just got to circle more and more. They're really, really fun. You have a really good quarterback in Curtis Rourke that made a number of mistakes early on in this game, but was able to bounce back. Elijah Surratt catching balls, really impressive. This is a good team. This is a team that probably won't have much to say in the Big Ten. I say that, but they don't get Oregon or USC. They get Michigan and Ohio State towards the end of the year, and with a bye in between, if you split those, then you're very much in this conversation. It's a very weird race up there in the Big Ten, and Indiana's a huge reason for that. So Curtis Rourke obviously did not play his best game. A couple of tough interceptions, especially that first one, and a fumble. Just got to play clean football going forward. Obviously, not an easy thing to fix, but one of those things that they didn't suffer from it earlier in the season. I would be a little bit surprised if it just became a problem in week 4. So really impressive stuff from them, and they stay undefeated up there with a number of other teams that are undefeated that are very confusing right about now. But let's get into this LSU game because this was the performance that they very much needed. They needed one to just kind of cleanse the senses, let them feel a little bit better about themselves, and that's exactly what they got in this one. The offense looked really good. The defense looked better than they have pretty much all year, and this is a South Alabama team that can really score points. I know they're not necessarily physically to the level of LSU, but absolutely, they're a team that can score points on you, and I expected them to score 20, 25 points on this team. They were able to hold them to 10. So huge performance from LSU. Caden Durham, their freshman running back, is an absolute star. 7 carries, 128 yards, and a touchdown rushing. 3 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown through the air. He is everything for this offense right now. And frankly, if you can get a little bit of a run game going with that offense throwing the ball, man, watch out for the entire rest of the SEC, because the reality is that Ole Miss game just became a little bit more attackable, and then you only have Alabama coming up. So this could be a team that makes a little bit of a run in the SEC. I don't know if they're going to make the SEC title, but a lot still on the table for this LSU team. South Alabama is 2-3 right now, but man, I still like them in the Sun Belt. I still think this is a very dangerous team and one of those that can absolutely make some noise in that conference. It's going to be an uphill battle. There's no two ways about that, but really impressive team. I think when you have Gio Lopez at quarterback, there's a lot of things you can do that not a lot of other teams in the country can do. So really, really awesome stuff from this team. I think LSU is one of those teams that you're just going to want to watch going forward. I don't know if they're going to be able to put it together the way they need to on defense, but if they can start getting along just a little bit more and they can get that running game going just a little bit more, they're a dangerous team going forward and definitely one that could be in the SEC title at the end of the year. This was a weird one. This was one that kind of flew a little bit under the radar with all the other craziness happening around, but Duke was trailing 20-0 late in the third quarter, and then they just found it. 3 drives and interception to end it, 3 touchdown drives, that is. Really remarkable performance from Malik Murphy, at least late in this game. And then you had Star Thomas just do incredible stuff in this one. 30 carries, 166 yards, a touchdown. He was everything for this team for a large portion of this game, and frankly, down the stretch of that game, it just looked like UNC was a little bit tired of getting hit by this guy. So really impressive stuff. There's going to be a number of stories coming out of this one. Obviously, the biggest one is going to be what happens with Mac Brown going forward, and I have the same question. I don't really know. I tend to believe it's probably going to be to the end of the year because I don't know this, but I feel pretty confident that North Carolina's not going to outright fire Mac Brown. I think they're going to either let him leave and have it be mutual by any means, or he's just going to have to walk out the door at the end of the year. And we'll see what happens there, but a really tough loss, one that you very much needed, and one that I know Mac Brown did not want to lose to Manny Diaz. I can say that pretty confidently. So at the end of the day, a ton to figure out for North Carolina. Definitely some things that aren't going to be figured out this year, so you'll have to wait a little bit. If you're a North Carolina fan, if you're Duke, you're undefeated. Somehow you've gone under the radar and gotten undefeated. A lot of ugly wins in there, but are undefeated right now. Head to Georgia Tech this upcoming weekend. If you get that win, then maybe this thing becomes a little bit more real. I think this is a really interesting team, and they're doing just enough to get these wins. So more respect to them. Definitely a huge win for them, and one that I know Manny Diaz badly wanted. And then we get to the Iowa State team because they're the most consistent commodity in the Big 12 right now. They're the only one that's not up and down on a weekly basis like crazy. They're making a number of big-time plays in this game, and frankly, this one started pretty ugly. 8 straight punts in this game, so not necessarily the great start to this game that we wanted, but it really opened up in the second half. 2 long touchdown drives with a field goal in between gave Iowa State a really comfortable edge. And during that time, their defense forced a turnover on downs, a forced fumble, and an interception. So did exactly what you needed them to do, and obviously did with that 0 on the board for Houston. And Iowa State is the leader in the clubhouse in my mind in the Big 12. I know Kansas State is technically the leader in the odds, but this is the team that's played the most consistent football thus far, and in the Big 12, that might just be what you need as of right now. It just might just be, can you show up every single week and play the same type of football, play the same level of football? And as of right now, Iowa State's doing exactly that. So there's still plenty ahead of them, no two ways about that. I think when you talk about the rest of the season, you do have Utah and KSU at the end of the season, so you have a little bit of a landing area to figure out all the kinks and then attack those 2 games with everything you have. But as of right now, Iowa State has a little bit of a buffer that not a lot of the other teams that at least went into this season feeling like they could win the title don't have right now. So they are 1-0 in the conference. I believe 1-0 in the conference, if I'm not mistaken. But they're 2-0 in the conference. But a couple other teams 2-0 with Texas Tech and Colorado, and then you just got to figure out where you stand. You definitely a lot in front of them, a couple of big-time games in front of them, but as of right now, if I was picking a team that I feel best about in the Big 12, probably would be Iowa State. I know that sounds a little bit crazy going into this season, but this is a really solid team and definitely doing just exactly what you needed them to do right now. So really crazy conference. When you talk about the Big 12 right now, I don't know if you can say anything with confidence. I said last week that Utah was the number 1 team in that conference. They get beat the next week. And then I just said it about Iowa State. Maybe they get beat this upcoming weekend. So it's a crazy conference, one of those that we knew was going to be crazy, but I didn't know if it was going to be this crazy, and it very much is. Colorado's got some noise to make. BYU is a team that has become really solid in that conference. I can't get a beat on the Big 12 right now. We'll try to break it down a little bit more simply tomorrow, try to give you a sense of where every conference stands after everyone's played at least one conference game. But, man, it's going to be really, really interesting, and maybe Colorado is that team that can throw a little bit of a wrench into the work. So, really remarkable weekend. I mean, when you talk about what college football is, I don't know if it gets any better than what happened in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. And then you got a number of other really, really good games. You got Colorado just taking UCF to the woodshed. You have a number of other games that were just really, really fun throughout this weekend. Not necessarily a ton that went down to the wire. Obviously, that Kentucky win was very, very hectic towards the end of that game. But overall, really fun week. One of those weekends that reminds you why this sport is the best sport in the world. Just absolutely incredible stuff, and cannot wait for this upcoming weekend. That is a little bit tempered down just a little bit from this past weekend, but plenty to look forward to, and we will start getting into it tomorrow, so definitely be on the lookout for that. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the social pages for all the content and updates you could possibly need. We have really incredible people doing awesome work across every single sport you could want. So anything in the world of sports, come on over to GSMC and we have you totally covered. But thank you once again for listening, and you guys have a nice day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.